Hey developers, welcome back to Code Dev. My name is Mudassir Makbul and this is my video after a year actually, more than a year. So without wasting any time or introducing myself, I'm gonna jump onto my screen and I'm gonna show you this guy. This little poor guy, he wants to learn JavaScript. But the problem is he doesn't know how to learn. He doesn't know what this entire path, the entire life cycle of the JavaScript developer looks like. So that's what I decided to do. I thought, why not just create a timeline for the JavaScript developer? How this guy right here can learn JavaScript and get there with these wonderful guys. Now, you may be wondering, who are these guys if you don't already know them? The first guy, he is the founder of Next.js in Warsaw. I can't pronounce his name, so I won't take that challenge. The second is my favorite, Avenue. So he's the creator of Vue.js as well as Wheat and many other wonderful tools. Lastly is Mr. Rich Harris. He's one of my favorites when it comes to speaking on JavaScript. I learned a lot from this guy. Not a lot, but enough to put him right here because I like him as not only as a creator, he's the creator of Svelte, which is the most easy JavaScript framework out there. So you're gonna hear about him later on as well. But for now, just keep in mind, when you look at the JavaScript and you look at the developers, you see this guy and immediately you want to be like them. But it's a long journey. You just can't start learning JavaScript development and just reach there. There is an entire process and it's going to take years. So let me show you what this entire process looks like and how you can start from here and get there. Let's begin. So the very first step is to learn JavaScript. Learn the basics. Just watch a video or a video series, a course, or go read some books. Do whatever you want to do. Consume the knowledge whichever way you can. First step is learn the basics. So learn the basics. Or in fact, I should say the first step is start with basics. Now, basics is a very vague term, right? So let's first see what comes within the basics. And during this learning phase, the basics phase, he will start from nothing right here, and then he will end up somewhere around here. I think this is the right estimation. And let me draw another line here. From this point to this point, he will learn everything he needs to know about JavaScript until he realizes that he knows pretty much all the JavaScript he needed to. So what he will learn? He will learn basics, which includes the variable, loops, function, inheritance. I should probably call it classes because I think that would seem more appropriate to you guys. And then things like prototype. Now prototypes and classes are something that if you're already at that stage, you would feel like, oh, I never used them. That's fine. But still, those still count as the basics of JavaScript. And then once he learns these basics, I'll say at etc. So you don't really just learn these basics and then say, oh, okay, I'm done. No, not done yet. There are way too many things. But just keep in mind, just learn the basics. The second thing you'll learn is the use of a package manager. And one of those package managers is NPM. Then the next step will be using APIs. And these APIs are more like the browser API. And one of those browser API is Fetch. So Fetch and other APIs. Fetch itself is something that kind of relates with the API. So what Fetch does basically is it lets you communicate with computers outside the browser. So it lets you make requests outside of the browser. This is Fetch. It's a browser's API. So let me maybe call it browser's APIs. And let me put a big etc here because again, in basics, there are a lot of things. So once you start, you will learn these basics until you feel like you have learned pretty much everything. And once you realize that you have learned all the basics of JavaScript, after that, you can create apps. You can interact with DOM. That means you can manipulate the DOM. You can also make API calls. And yeah, I think that's it. If you can do these things, you can create any app that you want in JavaScript using vanilla JavaScript. You can do the DOM manipulation because that's very important. And you can make API calls to fetch data from different servers. You can use NPM and all those things. So once you know these basic stuff, then you will feel like, you know what? I need to choose a framework. So here you will ask yourself, I need a framework. Now, what is a framework? A framework is basically something that lets you create these apps that you were creating with vanilla JavaScript with more ease. And this is where you're actually going to get depressed. You're going to spend a lot of time, or you may even give up, right? So once you hit that point where you feel like you know what, this is where I need a framework, take a deep breath, take your time, do not lose hope. So let me draw it like this. So this phase right here, I'm gonna make it red because it is quite challenging. In this phase, you're choosing a framework. You're choosing the framework because you have too many options. You will go to internet and the internet will tell you, these are the best frameworks, these are not. You'll ask people, they'll tell you learn this framework, not that. So you'll get confused. And what you will end up doing is you'll be wasting a lot of time. So the best thing to do there is do your research. I think doing research is best. And a part of that research is watching this video. So if you're watching my videos and some other guys on YouTube, I think you should be good. So do your research and then pick one framework and stick to it. This is very important. First, you have to choose one framework. There are too many frameworks. If you try to learn all of them at this stage of your career, you're just going to ruin yourself. So choose one framework, stick to it, and learn it as much as you can. And those frameworks could be React, that could be Vue, that could be Svelte. I hope it's not a spelling mistake because Svelte is a kind of an awkward name. And then if you're unlucky and if your research is bad, you might end up choosing Angular. If you're a beginner and you don't know what you're doing, or you just want to learn a framework, the only suggestion that I can give you at this stage, do not go with Angular, go with one of these. Although you'll find some other frameworks like Next.js, Nuxt.js, Nest.js, Solid.js, Quick. Oh, Quick is also a very good option right here, but maybe I shouldn't put it right here. I don't want to add Quick here. There is also another one called Astro. I might put Astro here. I don't know. Should I put Astro here or not? Because it's a little bit different than what these frameworks do. But just keep in mind, there is also an option called Astro. Do check that out. Maybe not learn that. I would strongly recommend going for one of these three frameworks: React, Vue, or Svelte. I went with Vue, by the way. So, just in case you need my personal opinion and you want to know which one I'm using, it was Vue. But you will be fine with going any of these. React is awesome. Vue is awesome too. Svelte is great. It's super easy. The most easy framework out there right now is Svelte. And the most hard one, and the one that will actually make your head go crazy, is no other than the old guy, Angular. So kind of stay away from it, but it's not that it's bad. There are a lot of companies that are still using Angular. But this stage, I think you're still way too immature. So hopefully you made the decision. And now you know which framework you want to use. And at this point, you can say, I know my framework. So at this point, you will know which framework exactly you want to use. Just keep in mind, you have to pick one framework and then you have to stick with that. Don't learn one framework and then just switch to another one just because someone said this framework is bad. That would be the worst advice anybody can give you. Just pick one framework, stick to it, and you'll be good for the next phase. And this is where things get a little interesting. Now, this phase is the longest one. So let me draw it. So this will go somewhere around maybe here. If I could draw it longer, I would, because most developer, they pretty much spend all their life here and they don't look further. But I will tell you why you should look further and what are the questions that will make you look further from here. So now you know your framework and you're using, remember, I said you're using your framework. You're not learning your framework. Learning won't take a lot of time, and it's the using, actually implementing within that framework that will make you learn the framework. If you do these steps right, you learn the JavaScript, you pick the right framework that you think is right for you, then the learning will be fun and you will be using your framework. And by using, I mean you will be building applications with that. And while building those applications, you'll face challenges. And those challenges will lead you to question. And those questions will lead you to answer. And that's how you will learn the framework. And during this step, the best help that you have is docs. All these frameworks, Vue, React, Svelte, all of them have great documentation. Vue has the best documentation. React has a very good beta documentation, but the actual React documentation is not that great. Svelte is new, so obviously, it has to have a good documentation as well. So I'd say just, read docs and watch tutorials and build. I mean, think of an app, build it. If you have job, if you have freelance work, use that to go through that phase where you're continuously building new apps, continuously building new ideas and trying to solve problem within the framework, right? And this will be fun. I think most people just stay there. They think like this framework is offering you everything. So you'll just stay there. You'll get only the work that this framework, let's say you're using React. So you'll just pick up React work, do it, and then you'll just stay stuck. And that could be the end of your life. But don't do that, because this phase will lead to a lot of questions. And some of those questions will help you build your application that come within the domain of that framework. But there are certain things that this framework, Vue, React, they won't be able to answer. And then you will feel like you need another framework. Or in fact, you'll do some research and then you will come across this term. And this term is called meta framework. So you will ask yourself, or you'll say, I need a meta framework. Now let me make this one green and let's just make this one red completely. So the reason for green here, let me make it white actually, because this is the phase where you're learning. So white seems more appropriate. At this point, you pretty much know all the details about your framework. You know how it works. You know how to manipulate the DOM. In fact, you really don't need to use the DOM API. You'll be using the framework to sort of deal with that, deal with reactivity, lifecycle hooks and stuff like that. So now this conclusion that you need a meta framework, it depends whether you have one of these questions. And let me list down those questions for you. So those questions are, what is SSR? SSR means server-side rendering. What is SSG, which is static site generation? And what is client-side rendering? I think it's CRR. Yeah, I think it is. So I think one of the first questions that usually come to your mind at this phase is one of these. Then once you jump into SSR, SSG, then there is another term which kind of comes into your mind, and that is hydration. With hydration, there is also rendering problem which comes into your mind, which actually is basically these three strategies kind of solve that rendering problem. But you will hear these terms in your mind, in and out, watching these videos, people talking about this. And the main reason, because you want to hear or you want to learn more about these things, or you're questioning yourself, what are they, is performance and efficiency. So by this time, you would want your applications to be more performant, more efficient. You would want to solve the problem that will make your applications load fast, deal with data fast, and these problems, these questions, they don't really come when you're working with smaller apps. They only come to your mind when you're working with bigger apps. You have lots of data. You want to make the user experience better. So I think I'm still missing a lot of questions here. But again, when you hit that SSR point or the hydration issue, that is when you will know that, this is the time you need to step further. And it will lead you to learn a meta framework. Now that you are using a simple framework like Vue or React, those are not simple framework. You still use them, but you would use framework that are built on top of those frameworks. And what are those frameworks? So let me first draw this life cycle. It will be something like this. In fact, let me divide it into two parts. In the first part, you will be learning the answer to these questions. And at the same time, you are also working with the meta frameworks. And let's just make them green because it's an exciting time to be in. Let's call it new concepts. So you're learning these new concepts, and those concepts have kind of forced you to learn a new meta framework. So let me list down a few meta frameworks for you. Let's say if you chose React, from React you would be using Next.js. And if you are using Vue, then you would use Nuxt.js. And if you chose Svelte, then I think it's called Svelte Kit. I don't really know what Angular has for server side because I'm not I don't have much knowledge on Angular. So these are the frameworks that you will be using if you make it to this point. So I'd be so happy if you make it to this point, because by now, actually Next.js, it uses React. So it's built on top of React. So first you have to learn React and then Next. It's an ultimate succession from React to Next. And same goes for Vue and Nuxt. They are kind of same framework. Nuxt is based on Vue, and SvelteKit, name suggests, it is based on Svelte. And this, my friends, is a very exciting phase again. This was exciting. Again, the trouble was only during this phase. If you make it through this phase, then learning the framework and then learning a framework on top of that framework and implementing these strategies to do the same thing, but in a better way, the server-side rendering and static site generation, hydration issues, performance, and all of that. These new concepts combined with the meta frameworks, I think it will make for a great time. I mean, you'll really enjoy it. And that curiosity will kind of make you look further. And what I mean by that is you might just stop here where, you know the meta framework, you pretty much know all these basic concepts that you had to, and now you feel like, you know what, there is nothing more to do. But guess what? There is. I don't know what happens after this because I am kind of at this level where I know the meta frameworks, I know the basics, but I'm trying to learn these new concepts. I want to know the fundamental principles. So some of those are JavaScript engines. For example, V8 is an engine which I think Node.js and Google Chrome uses. Engines basically are the thing that make the JavaScript run. So they take the raw JavaScript and then compile that down. I think that's what they do. I'm not too sure about them, by the way. But I will have a complete video on engines. You will also take a look at compilation. The way JavaScript compiles is basically just-in-time compilation called GIST. So these core strategies, the low-level strategies, low-level JS, I'm going to call that. So this is what you do. And if you could do this, if you could learn these basic concepts, let me add a big etc here because I have no idea what else lies in this domain or in this phase. But if you can dive deeper into these concepts, then you can bridge your gap from here to here. So this is a complete phase, this one. I'm not going to mark it because I have no idea. This is where I kind of lie. So, I am not the best guy to be talking about what takes you from here to here. These guys are, so you should better go listen to them. But again, the idea is simple. This is all that you need to know for the development up until this point. So this will make you a good developer. And then if you want to create your own framework or you want to build these open source tools, that's when you kind of get into this phase. And it's great actually. I mean, if you get to this point, you're already a genius in my eyes. Oh, one more thing that I kind of missed. I didn't really miss, but you don't really need that. But as soon as you start creating applications that are intensive, they have a lot of data, there's the data flowing all over the place, state management, routing, stuff like that happening. Well, by the way, state management and routing is something that I also missed, which comes somewhere between this phase and this phase. So all these frameworks have routers. So these are client-side routers. Once you get to this phase, then you will sort of learn how to manage those client-side routing, server-side routing, which piece of your code should run on the server, which piece of your code should run on the client. All these things basically go here in the meta frameworks. I might also add Node.js here. But the reason I didn't add Node.js, Node.js has its own frameworks, Express.js, and I think a few other. I'm not a Node developer, so I don't really have much information on that. But Node depends. If you choose the front end path, then this is what you'll be doing from here on. This is what you'll be doing. But let's say if you decide you don't want to do any more front end, you just want to learn the back end, and you just want to do Node.js. I think Node.js will kind of replace this entire step. So I will sort of leave Node.js somewhere around here. But I mean, it's up to you to where you want to put it. It depends whether you want to use Node or not. I don't think you will. Because Next kind of solves that problem, but it solves that problem through the serverless approach. Node is different. Node is a conventional backend runtime. So again, I don't want to make it too complicated for you, right? So that's why I'm not going too deep into these concepts, but you get the idea. This is how the life cycle sort of looks. So one thing that I was mentioning I missed, let me draw that real quick. As soon as you hit this point, you know the JavaScript, you're learning the framework, and as soon as your app gets a little tricky, this is what you're going to do. You're not going to code in JavaScript if you are a wise developer. You will code in TypeScript. Now you may wonder, oh, what is TypeScript? Is this another language? Well, it is a language, but it is not really a language. It is more like a linter for JavaScript. When you work on large application, the problems you face is linting, type safety, a better developer experience. Now, there are some limitations to JavaScript. You really can't achieve that level of type safety. In fact, no type safety at all unless you use JSDocs or some other tools, which are not really as popular as TypeScript is. So the ultimate goal will be, while you're doing this stuff, also learn TypeScript. And instead of writing your code in JavaScript, write in TypeScript. Learn about types. So this is something that goes in parallel. It's not a blocker. You can still keep on this path. You can still go on and build the application while you're learning TypeScript. And TypeScript is something I think that you don't really learn. You sort of practice it, and you just start to adopt it by practicing. There is no logical thing except, defining the types and making sure, all your types are kind of safe and all. So if you can keep this path going, if you can make through this hurdle, rest of it will be pretty easy for you. It will take a lot of time. It will definitely, a lot of questions will come to your mind. And what I will do from this video onwards, I will try to answer all the questions starting from this phase to this phase. I'll talk about SSR, SSG. I'll talk about hydration, rendering, performance issues, engine itself, how compilation work. So, if you want to get deep into how JavaScript works, let me know in the comments down below which of these concepts has caught your attention and you want to get deeper into that. Let me know. I'd be more than happy to help you out and hopefully take you from this phase to this phase. And hopefully I can also go from this area to this area as soon as I can, because I really want to. I love JavaScript. JavaScript, by the way, is not the only language I use. But again, it's one of the languages, that sort of gives you immediate feedback. When you code in JavaScript, you get immediate feedback in the browser. So it's fun learning. So if you're confused whether you should learn JavaScript or not, close your eyes, man, and then learn JavaScript. You don't have a better option if you're a beginner. So don't hesitate, learn it, follow this path. You should be good. So that's it. Goodbye. See you in the next video. But before you go, there is a red button down there which you need to press. See ya.